So always excited to get to jump in and talk about the NetScaler. Definitely passionate about anything Citrix related. And then definitely excited about some of the things that they've done differently with the newest update to the product. And so that's why we put together this webinar. And it's awesome it appears on tax day. So everybody's been working hard, getting all their taxes done and everything. Now you get to focus in on what you can spend your hard-earned tax refunds on. And so great to get to talk about the NetScaler and the neat stuff that's coming up with it. So we've had the NetScaler for quite a while, and it's done a lot of really powerful things for us in our organization. And some of the new enhancements that we're going to get to talk about in the 10.5 version is we'll talk about the GUI. Probably one of the biggest things that everybody always has comments about, or they've got really bad experiences in the past with, has been getting the GUI to work. And so we'll talk about what some of the shortcomings were and how Citrix has addressed those to really make the 10.5 version of the NetScaler stand out. We'll talk about some enhancements that they've made to the code, some new things they've brought to the table. We'll talk a little bit about SSL Profiles, some of the things where you had to set up your NetScaler a certain way, and any differences there, you would need a separate NetScaler. Now we can go in and we can differentiate some of those settings using an SSL profile and have different settings on one NetScaler platform. We'll talk about some enhancements to Datastream, working with our database products on the back end for load balancing, what they've changed about that. More exciting stuff coming to the Access Gateway side of things. We've had the Access Gateway Enterprise Edition for a while. In the 10.1 version of the code, they started calling it the NetScaler Gateway. And so that carries forward into the 10.5 version of the code. And then one of the nice things they've done is they've really increased the functionality of what we call the endpoint analysis. This is where we can go in and look at a user device coming in. We can do a scan on this device to make sure it meets certain criteria. We've always had the endpoint analysis around to be able to go in and scan the end user device looking for certain things, such as registry settings or files or services that are running. Now they've got enhanced endpoint analysis. We can go in and look at domain membership. We can look at more than just Windows boxes. They've got support for the Mac OS X on there, so we can go in and look for certain things there. And then XenMobile is a really big product that keeps gaining more momentum out in the marketplace. You've got the app controller and the mobile device management. Now you've got version 10 and those pieces becoming integrated. And the access point for that is the NetScaler. And so you set up a NetScaler. We've typically used the gateway for getting to XenApp and XenDesktop. They've used the NetScaler as that launching point for connecting to XenMobile. So they've given us some really nice integration for being able to set up and connect to the back end using the NetScaler. They've also brought in some new features, things that we didn't really have in the past that we can take advantage of now. We'll go in and we'll take a look at what they've done with clustering, some of the changes for licensing of that feature, and then they've gone in and changed the different components or the different features that are available with it. We'll also talk a little bit about Insight, really awesome product that we've had for a couple of revisions to be able to go in and look at what web traffic we have. Where is it coming from? How many requests? Where are they going? And so we can get a lot of really good information about that. They've made some big enhancements to it with the 10.5 version as well. We'll also talk a little bit about caching on the NetScaler. It's a feature that's been around for a while, and they've made an enhancement to it with what are called front-end optimizations. So we'll go in and take a look at what those are and how they're going to improve the application delivery process for the users. Okay? So jumping in, let's talk about the GUI. Okay? And then the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about the NetScaler GUI is going to be Java. Okay? And what happens is we mention Java, and then everybody gets this look on their face like, oh no. And yes, I've been there. We've all been there. If you've got a NetScaler, going in to configure it through the GUI can sometimes be a nightmare. Not because there's anything wrong with the NetScaler interface, but just the way that it interacts with Java causes all sorts of uncertainty. Okay? You go in and you're going to have Java crashes. You're going to have Java bugs, to which they release Java updates, which then cause things not to work. So it's not much fun. In fact, there's a lot of organizations that will go out and they'll set up a virtual machine just to be able to manage their NetScaler. You go in, it's got Windows XP on it, it's got an antique version of Java version 6, and then it works. If you grab any modern computer and try to connect, it's very hit or miss on whether or not things are going to work. So we've had this problem throughout the past several revisions of the NetScaler, and you'll probably recognize some of these issues. Okay? You've probably seen this one. You go to launch it, and it says your Java applet cannot be loaded. And then it tells you possible reasons. It says Java's not installed. The worst one is when it tells you that, but you know that you just installed Java. And so you go and you've installed Java again, you run the little test, and it says that it works. And here's this error. I can't tell you why, but this is very, very common. Or we go in and we try to click on something and it tells us the Java applet couldn't be loaded. So then we got to dump it, and sometimes we got to go in and close out Java and then try to relaunch the app. Okay? We go in here and we try to launch the app. You get the little ribbon up here across the top. Tells you that your plugin's out of date. So then you might think, okay, well maybe I'll update the plugin. No. If this machine was set up and you know that it worked, don't update the plugin. You start changing pieces around, the updated plugin may break things. Okay? So then you're going to tell it to run this time. And you're going to get this every single time you launch the browser. It's going to go in and say, your plugin is out of date. What do you want to do? Okay? And then one of my favorite ones. You just click on something and nothing happens. So we just sit here and we wait. Yeah, this will happen almost every time. You'll click on it. There'll be a little wait. We're hoping that something comes up. But it seems like more often than not, we connect, we wait, and then nothing happens. And so after about 20 or 30 seconds, then we've got to go in. Usually we've got to terminate the browser process. Then we got to go in and terminate Java, and then start everything back up and reopen the browser, reconnect, pull down the Java applet, and hope that it connects. So it's been a big hassle over the years interacting with the GUI sometimes. And I love this one. This is not necessarily Java. This is a Chrome issue. Okay, so you got Java running on Chrome, and then Chrome has decided that the web page has crashed, which it hasn't. So you can just click on Wait, and you can go back to doing your configuration. Or we could click on here to do some configuration, and then it says, oh, and it just disappears. Okay, there wasn't actually a problem there. Fortunately, they've gone in and fixed this with Chrome. You can go in and set up your icon and tell it to disable the hang monitor, and then this will quit going in and trying to check and fix whatever's wrong. Okay, so we've gotten a little bit better with this, but this one is Chrome interacting with Java. Okay, so all sorts of fun headaches that we've had to deal with whenever we're dealing with the Java version of the GUI. Okay, and over the years we've been talking about we've got these problems, we want to get away from them. You had the 9.3 version of the code. You used Internet Explorer. You pulled out this big bulky Java app. And it let us go in and configure, but we're still using Java. Then they said, okay, we're going to try to get away from Java. So when we made the transition to the 10.0 version of the code, what they did was they said, okay, we're going to get rid of some of the Java. And what they did was they got rid of the menu system. So the menu that you see here from the 10.0 or 10.1 version of the code, this is the HTML5 menu. Okay? You still go in and click on something, and you click your action, and it launches Java. Okay, so still 10.1 and 10.0 very heavily invested in using Java to configure the box. Okay, so what are they doing different to fix things in 10.5? And they've totally redesigned the whole interface. Okay, so they make some big changes here. So you can go in and see this is the 10.5 version of the code. Okay, a little bit different. You used to have the gray login screen. Now you go in and you get this nice blue gradient here to let you know that you're logging into the newer version. Okay, so you would go in and log in right off the bat. A little bit different. We've got a new setup wizard. Okay, so it comes in and says, okay, there's some things that you should probably do to make this thing work, and it brings them front and center. It says you should probably give it a subnet IP. You should probably take care of DNS. You should probably license the NetScaler, which is always a fun process. This makes it very easy to say front and center, here's a few things that you need to do to really get this product up and working. Okay? And they do a good job with this. So if you want to go in and configure the subnet IP address, you click on this. It tells you what a subnet IP address is. Okay? And then it has you go in and configure it. So you put in the IP address. This is for communication NetScaler to back end. They explain that process here, the way the full reverse proxy works. And then you're putting in an address. And then that becomes your address for NetScaler to back-end communication. Okay? Wants you to go in and configure some of your other settings. You can come in here, give it a host name, things like that. Okay? And then if you want to put licenses on there, you can go in and it'll make it very easy to hunt down your license, update it, and it copies it to the NetScaler. Once it's done, it pretty much does a reboot for you. The reboot screen is even nicer. What it does is it says it's going to do a warm reboot, tells you how long it should take, and then it even gives you a little countdown. So it says it should be about 30 seconds. It'll count down for 30 seconds and then try to reconnect. And then if it does, it'll bring you back to the appropriate login screen. Okay? So really nice. We've got a NetScaler, and if you ran through that wizard, it gets your machine up and going without any Java. Okay? So all sorts of places where we might have had problems doing that basic configuration in the past. Okay? So pretty much any HTML5 browser, we'd have been able to run through this configuration on the NetScaler. If you go in and take a look at it, this is logged in. Over here, you've still got the HTML5 menu. Here's when they go in and take a look at the licensing. And with the licensing, what you can do is you can go in and see, we copy the license file, it rebooted. Here's the features that are available. And so in this particular version of it, they've gone in and this is Platinum Edition, and it's got pretty much everything available. Now, you'll see that I am using the 10.5 build 51 version of the code, and you can see I pretty much got almost everything. One thing that it doesn't include is what's called clustering. We'll talk about that a little bit later. They've also made a change to the licensing whenever you're using build 52 or newer. So if you go in and you're using a newer version of the 10.5 code, you may have this feature enabled. Okay? So does a really nice job of getting us in and getting us working with the environment. If you wanted to go in and set up the NetScaler to do certain things, you can go in here. For instance, here's the basic features. So I can go in and say I want to configure a basic feature, and then I can go in, click on the basic features, shows me NetScaler functionality, and then there are just little check boxes to say this is what I want to do. And so I can just go in and check, check, check. All of this is HTML. Okay? So I don't have to have Java to configure features on the NetScaler. Not necessarily as pretty of a situation when you look at the legacy versions. Okay? So here you can go in and select the options that you want, and then that goes in and enables the features for you. Okay? Take a real quick look at load balancing. If you wanted to go in and do load balancing, in the past, very heavy with the Java. You would go in and create server objects, you would create services, you might create monitors, you might create the load balancing vServer, and you're going to have to tie it all together. And without Java, you can't do any of that. Okay? So here, you would go in and create your server objects. So you'd click on the server node, you'd click on add, and then you get an HTML window that says, okay, what do you want to do? You'd go in and give it a name, you'd give it an IP address, and that would create your object for you. Okay? And so then you can see an object was created, and we didn't need to use Java for it. Okay? Here's creating a service. So you go in and you create a service, you'd populate the information, gives you a little drop-down list. We've had that in Java. We still have that capability here. Shows you the server objects that we've created. Okay? And we can go in and put in place our service. Still, everything is editable just like it was before, just different menu way of doing things with HTML pop-outs instead of Java pop-ups. Okay? So we can go in and configure anything that we used to do right here. Okay? If I want to go in and do a monitor, I can click on the monitor option. I can come in here and say I want to change the monitor, and we do that. We can use a process called binding a monitor. So I go in and select a monitor in here. It gives me a drop-down list of all the monitors. I can select which monitor I want. add that in here, and then I've got a monitor. Again, used to require Java for this. We can go in and do it without it now. Okay. If I want to go in and create a virtual server, same process. Click on the virtual server, go in, create my object here. So specify a name for it, the IP address. It says, what do you want to bind it to? Here's my services. So I can say I want to bind it to a service. Come in here, I can see the service that I just created. Okay. Decide to bind it to this load balancing V server, and I've now been able to create a end-to-end. Here's the back end, here's the front end, and now I'm tying them together. Again, all without Java. Okay? So very nice functionality to be able to go in and configure almost anything that we need to without having to have a Java interface for it. Okay? If I wanted to go in and configure a load balancing method, you've got all of the menu options over here. We used to have Java and it had little tabs. Okay? Now you go in and select the option that you want, and then the settings are there. So you can go in and hit the little drop-down list and select a different load balancing method if you want to go in and change that. So a lot of different things that we can do. Same thing with persistence. It's an option over here. You click on it, brings it front and center here, and you can go in and configure your persistence. Okay? Gives you the list of types of persistence, and we can select whatever we would like here. Okay? Makes it very easy to go in and do load balancing, one of the big functions of the NetScaler, without having to configure Java and go through all the headaches of getting it up and running. Okay? When it comes to the gateway, we've gone in and we've changed the name. We used to have the Access Gateway. We had a Linux-based appliance. They ported it onto the NetScaler. We called it the Access Gateway Enterprise Edition. So we've had that hosted on the NetScaler for several revisions. It's there in the 10.0 version of the code. When they move to the 10.1 version of the code, they start calling it the NetScaler Gateway. Same functionality and everything, just a little bit different branding to separate it from the Linux-based standalone appliance. Okay? And so you can go in and you've got the NetScaler Gateway over here. You've got the configuration options for it. Now, we used to have a very Java-based policy manager. So you go in and it would open up a Java applet. Some people liked it, some people hated it. Again, your mileage may vary depending on if Java is going to work or not. So you might go in and say, I want to work with policies. Java crashes. You're not doing any configuration. So here, what they've done is they've also rewritten all of this for HTML5. Okay? So you can go in and click on the policy manager, and what it does is it pulls up the bind points. Okay? I can create policies and bind them to different locations. A little bit different philosophy here. Here's the bind points. Select the bind point that you want, then select the policy that you would like to bind to it. Okay? So you can go in and say that you want to do authentication. Say this is going to be authentication. Select primary or secondary authentication. What type of authentication? So it could be local authentication. We could be binding LDAP. We could do radius, TACACS, anything like that. We select the type of authentication, and then you would go in and configure your policy for it and where we want to put it. Okay? So it makes it very easy to go in and select and bind the components directly to the bind points. Okay? A lot of fun with that. Very, very different type of interface. Again, without the Java, it becomes much easier to go in and configure this from almost any machine. Okay? So now what I want to do is get away from the GUI changes and everything and start talking about some things that changed about the actual product. Okay? Yes, everybody's excited about the GUI. That is a big thing that's driving a lot of people to move to the 10.5 version of the code. But there are some changes to what the NetScaler is capable of doing that really open up some exciting possibilities. Okay? So we'll go in and take a look at some of these. One of these is SSL Profiles. Okay? And what we can do is a profile is a collection of settings. And in the past, you would go in and have certain settings, and they were global. Okay? So you want to go in and you want to have protection for SSL renegotiation attacks. Okay? And so you would go in and you would have that enabled or disabled. And then it applied to all SSL entities on the NetScaler. Okay? Well, if you needed that in some cases and not in other cases, you would need separate NetScalers. Okay? Now what they've done is they've gone in and said, okay, for the way SSL is going to behave, we can create a profile, a collection of settings. And then I can go in and say these settings apply to this entity. Here's a separate set of configurations, and they apply to a different entity. And so we can go in and configure those and apply them as needed without having to be a all or nothing. Okay? And so it's not required that we can do this. We can go in and configure them globally, but there are those little one-off scenarios where people are having to have what I call NetScalers for the sake of NetScalers. Okay? You have a NetScaler because you need something different here than what you have over here. Now it's just a different setting, and you apply it to your different entity all in one box. So really nice thing that they brought in that fixes that for those scenarios. Okay? If you want to take a look at it, here's a load balancing vServer of type SSL. It's got additional settings from a regular load balancing vServer, so you'll be going in and configuring the SSL certificate, the encryption algorithms, and things like that. Here you can go in and create a profile. You can see some of the different settings. Okay? And so for any of these settings, we can go and configure these and then apply them to different entities as needed. So it doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all anymore. Okay? So really nice capability that we didn't used to have in the past. So you just go in, configure your SSL profile, apply it here, and then this entity behaves this way. I can have a totally separate one, totally separate entity, and have different settings apply to it. Okay? Now, Datastream. Datastream is a feature that was introduced in the 9.3 version of the code. And what it does is it gives us the ability to do load balancing for databases. Okay? And what it's done is it has worked for Microsoft SQL and MySQL. Okay? And so you can go in and you can configure a service type of SQL and set up your NetScaler to talk to an SQL database on the back end. Okay? Either type Microsoft SQL or MySQL. And then you can also do load balancing vServer on the front end, tie those together, and you can do load balancing and content switching with SQL. Okay? In the 10.5 version, they've added support for Oracle. So now the NetScaler understands how to talk to Oracle on the back end. It allows you to create a load balancing vServer for Oracle, and then we can load balance traffic between multiple Oracle databases, just like we can for Microsoft SQL and MySQL. Okay? So some nice capabilities that we didn't used to have. Here is the service. This is NetScaler to back-end communication. I can go in and say, here is a server, and then my protocol can be Oracle. You used to just have the options for Microsoft SQL and MySQL. Okay? On the front end, user connecting to the NetScaler, create a load balancing vServer, select the protocol type. Again, used to have just the MySQL and Microsoft SQL. Now we've got support for Oracle as well. They can go in and they can add in monitors and things like that as well. And so it lets us enhance that data stream capability. So what some people are doing is they're going in and load balancing their SQL traffic just in general. Some people go in and use content switching. What are you doing with your SQL traffic? Are you making a write to the database? If so, then we're going to send you to the master database to make changes to it. If you're sending a query, then we'll send you to some read-only copies, and you can just query the read-only database. Okay? And so we can go in and see what's going on with what capabilities you're trying to use and where we want to send you. Okay? Now, with the endpoint analysis, we've had this feature in the past. It's we call it a pre-authentication scan. So the user comes in to use the access gateway functionality. We can use that as a full SSL VPN. Most people will be using that for ICA proxy. They've got XenApp and XenDesktop on the back end. They want to come in and connect to those resources across the internet. Okay? Now, do we want to open that up to everybody? In some cases, yes. In some cases, we want to be a little bit more discriminatory about who we let into the environment, okay, or what machines we're letting into the environment. So what we can do is we can use pre-authentication to scan their system and make sure they meet certain requirements. Okay? So I might scan to see, are you a corporate issued device? If you're a corporate issued PC, of course, you are welcome into the environment, keys to the kingdom. Okay? You're not a corporate issued PC. This is your home PC. Does it have the latest antivirus? Okay? Is it up to date? Things like that. And we can go in and scan that system, make sure you meet certain requirements, and then I let you in. Okay? For those of you guys that come from a XenApp or XenDesktop background, you may be familiar with Smart Access. This is where we can discriminate further how we treat you inside XenApp and XenDesktop. So it's not just are you in or not. It could be you're in as a corporate issued PC, you get keys to the kingdom. All of your applications are available. You got client drive redirection, printer redirection, all of that. Separately, you're not a corporate issued PC, but you have the proper antivirus and your Microsoft patches are up to date. We're going to let you into the environment, but, and then I could filter out our super secret application, and you're not going to get client drive redirection, you're not going to get clipboard redirection, you're not going to get printer redirection. And I can go in and tie how my XenApp and XenDesktop environment behaves to the result of this endpoint analysis. Okay? And so what I can do is I can go in and look for certain things. What they've done now in the 10.5 version of the code is they've enhanced that list of certain things. Okay? Sure, I want to go in and look for your operating system or a registry setting or a file. Okay? Now we can go in and I can look for, do you have backup software? Do you have data loss prevention software? Do you have desktop sharing software? Okay? And some of these may not be things that I want you to have. They may be things I want to make sure you don't have. Okay? So you may be coming in from a machine, but you're sharing the desktop. That could be an issue. Okay? Do you have desktop sharing software? If so, maybe I don't let you into the environment. Okay? And so we can look for different types of things to be able to determine if we're going to let users in. And so with the advanced endpoint analysis scan, we can go in and we can look deeper. Okay? So I can go in and look for any of these different types of things. We can go in and look for domain membership. Used to we would go, usually watermark the registry or look for something like that. Now it's just a flat-out setting. Is it a member of a domain? What domain? We put it in there and it can check it. Okay? Corporate issued PC, I know what they are. There are machines. We've got their MAC addresses. I can go in and say you need to be coming in with that MAC address or you're not getting in. Okay? And so I can go and do a lot of nice things to really enhance making sure that I want you in or I don't want you in to protect my back end, whether from the full SSL VPN standpoint or the ICA proxy standpoint. And again, all of this can tie to smart access. You're not a domain machine, you don't have the MAC address, whatever the case may be, you still get access, but I can configure whatever policy restrictions I want on the XenApp and XenDesktop side. Okay? Now, we've had support for, well, we've had the ability to go in and look at Mac devices. It's been a beta piece of software. They've now gone in and said, okay, we formally have support for Mac OS X. So on the endpoint analysis scan, it's going to offer you a piece of software. They now have a piece of software that you can install on your Mac and do a scan. What can we look for? And then you can see the list of supported features that I can scan a Mac to see if you meet certain requirements. So I could go in and look for antivirus or anti-spyware, anti-phishing software, firewall, MAC address, things like that. Okay? So they've really stepped this up in terms of what we can do. Show you a couple screenshots of this. Here's the gateway. Here's what we're calling pre-authentication policies. This is where we use these endpoint analysis scans. So what you can do is come in here and create one of these. It says, what do we want to happen? So I could say, if you meet the requirements, you're allowed access. And then under what conditions, and then I can go in and use my expression editor. And so what I do is I can go in and say, I'm going to look for Windows machines or Mac machines. Okay? And then Windows, and then here's that list of things that I could look for. Okay? I'm going to be looking for, and then you can specify anti-phishing, certain type of software. Okay? I could change it to anti-spyware and then look for, do you have a certain version? Or antivirus software and a certain version. Or a domain check. What domain? Okay? And you can go in and specify anything that you want to meet the requirement that you are a part of, you meet these complexity requirements or this domain or have this software before I let you into the environment. Okay? So very, very powerful tool for discriminating how we're going to treat different user devices that we may not control. Okay? With the XenMobile integration, you'll see this down here in the bottom left. It says integrate with Citrix products. They've got XenMobile, they've got XenApp and XenDesktop. We used to have some wizards and things that you could go in and use to say, okay, I want to bring users in, connect them to, and then we would do like a published application wizard. and it would ask us about our XenApp backend. We would put in our configuration, and then it would configure things for us. Okay? Now what we can do is we can go in and run through these wizards, and it's going to say, what are you connecting to on the back end? Okay? And then how do I talk to that back end component? And it will put all this in place so that we can come in and hit the NetScaler, connect to XenApp and XenDesktop, or we can connect to XenMobile and the app controller, things like that. Okay? So if you come in here, shows you, your different settings, says here's the different things that you may need to configure, you may need to consider. Here's maybe some components that you might want to load balance. And then it's got the different hints for how you might want to go in and put this in place. Okay? So you can very easily come in here, say I want to configure this for XenMobile. We're going to connect through a gateway. We're going to load balance the device manager component, things like that. And then you'll go in and ask us questions about the environment. Here we got the same thing for XenApp and XenDesktop. You go in and say I want to connect to my XenApp and XenDesktop. How does it work? Okay? What am I going to connect you to on the back end? So it says you're going to come in here and hit the gateway. Then you're going to be connecting to web interface or storefront. And so you go in and specify which of those that you're using. Okay? And then it says, okay, we're connecting to storefront. What storefront? Okay? Give it the FQDN. Where's the site on there? What's the name of the store? What are my STAs? Okay? And so we've got these different pieces that you would configure for remote access. We go in and put this in place, and we tell this wizard about it, and it's going to set up the gateway. It's going to set up the connection to the back end. This is called a session policy and a session profile to allow users, if they come in through a web browser, here's where you connect to on the back end. They come in through a plugin, here's where they connect to on the back end. And it'll put all that configuration in there just from us answering these basic setup questions. Okay? So really nice functionality that they've enhanced on here to make it easier to tie the gateway functionality in with the XenApp and XenDesktop backend. Okay, so let's take a look at some new features, things that we didn't have in the past that are now available in the 10.5 version. Okay, and clustering is a feature that is somewhat new, been out for about 3 years, came out in the 10.0 version of the code. Okay, and what clustering allows us to do is to aggregate the horsepower of NetScalers. Okay, so you may be in a situation where you've got a NetScaler and you're in an environment where you're pushing a large volume of traffic. And it could be a larger volume of traffic than a single NetScaler platform can support. If you go back 3 years ago, we were talking about 50 gig NetScalers. So if you're pushing more than 50 gigs, you're going to have to do some things with your solution to push a larger volume of traffic through multiple NetScalers. And it gets a little bit dicey, and it's not a nice, neat, standardized configuration. So what you would do is you could use clustering. Okay, you'll also see it called TriScale Clustering. But the idea is we can aggregate the horsepower of NetScalers and push a larger volume of traffic. So I could have a NetScaler that pushes 50 gigs, or I could bring in 2 of those and push 100 gigs. Okay? And then I would typically use an N+1 model for redundancy. So if 50 wasn't going to cut it, I would have 2 of them to give me 100. I would add a third so that if I lost one of those, I could still push 100. Okay? And this will allow us to cluster from 2 all the way up to 32. So if you go back and look at it, the original release said we can do clustering of 32 devices and push 1.6 terabits of throughput. Okay? We've since come out with new versions of NetScaler. You've now got the 120 and the 150 gigabits of throughput out there. And so this theoretical number for a cluster is in the 3 to 4 terabit range now instead of just 1.6. Okay? Now, you don't have to be at the high end of the spectrum. You could be at the lower end. You could have a pair of NetScalers and they push 5 gigs of throughput. And when 5 gigs is not enough, then you're going to have to make a capital investment and buy new NetScalers and things like that. Or what they wanted to do is they wanted to sell you a clustering license, which would be cheaper than new equipment. You buy the clustering license and it allows you to aggregate those 2 NetScalers. So now you've got 2 NetScalers pushing 10 gigs of throughput. Okay? You might buy a third one to have the N+1 redundancy, and that's going to be cheaper than dumping the hardware and buying new. Okay? The problem with this was not very many people used it. Okay? You ran into the situation of you could be a large entity that's pushing a huge volume of traffic and needs clustering. You're not just going to adopt it overnight. Okay? Next time they build out a data center, maybe this is the solution they go with. Or 3 years ago, you bought your NetScaler, you've got your pay-as-you-grow capability, and you're still within that. So you haven't really outgrown your solution within 3 years. Okay? So it's not something that we've seen wildly adopted over the first 3 years of this implementation. The second problem is that if we were to jump in and use clustering, there are some features in the 10.0 version of the code not supported by clustering. Okay? It's really cool. When you have a 10.0 NetScaler and you log in, it shows you all the features, and it's this big long menu. And so there's like 25 or 30 items on there. You then put your NetScaler into a cluster and it reboots, and like 10 of them are gone, and the menu gets a lot shorter. Okay? Why? Because there's features that you cannot use within clustering. Okay? Some of them are very popular features. Some of them are very powerful features. Okay? You may have heard of the application firewall. Okay? Very powerful feature. A lot of people would say it's the most powerful feature on the NetScaler. Okay? Not supported in clustering with 10.0. GSLB. Okay? Site level redundancy ties in with DNS and can direct users to one site or another, or a primary site and a DR site. Not supported with clustering. Okay? Gateway. We lose that functionality with the cluster. So there are some limitations to it. Okay? So when we get to the 10.5 version of the code, Citrix has really stepped it up, and they've addressed these two big issues I presented. Okay? First of all, they've gone in and they've fixed a lot of the feature issues. Okay? So there are missing features. We can now have access to them. So they've incorporated GSLB, the app firewall, the NetScaler gateway into the config of a clustered NetScaler. So we can go in and have a standardized configuration and have those features available. Okay? Here's the second thing they did, is they changed the licensing model. And the problem with this is they changed it in the middle of the release. Okay? So if you've got build 51 or older, like I showed you the screenshot for, it says that you need a license for clustering, just like it did in 10.1 and 10.0. Okay? This past fall, I think October, November-ish, they decided that they were going to change that. So when you upgrade to build 52 or newer, clustering is included with the Enterprise and Platinum editions. Okay? So there's a lot of people that may not have paid attention to this feature in the past that now are going to look at it because it's included. So some people, whenever I'm teaching classes, will ask about HA, which is a active, passive, primary, secondary scenario, and they say, well, how could I set these up in active-active? And you can't. Okay? That would be what clustering is. The difference is, when you bought 2 NetScalers, you could do HA. You needed to buy 2 NetScalers plus a license to do clustering. Now it's included. So we'll probably start seeing a lot of people use clustering, take advantage of the higher throughput of your 2 devices that you purchased, and be able to squeeze some more performance out of them. Okay? So now it's included with the Enterprise and Platinum, not an additional license. Okay? So they've gone in and added in the support and brought that in here. If you go look at the feature comparison, you can see right here, this comes off of the eDocs. Okay? So you've got different features and things that are available. You can see what's included in the 10.0 version. Here's GSLB, not included. Okay? 10.5, they made it happen. Okay? You come in here, here's the app firewall. Not available on the 10.0 version. Okay? They did get it in the 10.5 version. Okay? And then I believe this one, Gateway. Okay? Not included in previous editions. They did make it available in 10.5. Okay? So again, we don't have to go and have separate NetScalers for those functions. We can tie them in with our configuration here. Okay? On the reporting side of things, okay? Awesome component that came out in the 10.0 version is called Insight. Okay? And so you can go in and you can get the Insight Center for the NetScaler, and it's got a web component and an HDX component. And what it will do is it will grab app flow statistics about traffic flowing through the NetScaler, dump them off to this Insight Center. It's a virtual appliance that you can bring in, and then it will analyze it and give you awesome statistics. Okay, where are my users coming from? You can go and see, most of your users are using Safari or Internet Explorer or different things like that. What are they requesting? Okay, you can see the URLs that they're looking for. You can see the traffic distribution. I'm doing load balancing between 3 servers. Here's my traffic comes in. Here's my traffic going out. Is it an even distribution of traffic, or is one server getting more requests than the other? And I can go in and see that visually using the Insight Center. Okay? In 10.5, they've done 2 big things here. One of them is they've added geomapping capability. So we're looking at, here's a user and what they're requesting. Let's map that out. Where did that IP address come from? So I can see a really nice map and where my traffic is. Okay? Here's a screenshot of it. So you can go in and see your traffic flow and the different countries and how many requests you're having. Okay? So where is your distribution of traffic coming from? Okay? Mostly Asia, some from Central Europe, none from America. And we can go in and see this graphically using this data. Okay? The second thing that they've added is in the 10.5 version, we can go in and grab a lot of reports about this data. So I can go in and see it, and then I can generate a report so I can refer back to it later on in the future. Okay? So very nice feature to be able to go in and take a look at where our traffic is coming from, where we're sending it. If you're using the gateway functionality and you're working with XenApp and XenDesktop, one of the big things you're probably after is ICA proxy. Okay? With the Enterprise and Platinum editions, you get HDX Insight. Okay? So it's not just where users are coming to access websites, it's where our users are coming from to access ICA, okay, our XenApp and XenDesktop protocol. In addition, who are these users? And it will tell us who the users are. It'll tell us what our throughput is. Okay? So we're pulling 5 megs of throughput through the gateway for 50 users. It'll tell us who the 50 users are. I can go in and drill into one of those user sessions and see this user is consuming 23 kilobits of bandwidth. Okay? He's got 2 applications open. What are they? And it'll tell me that. I can see his ICA channel. Okay? So the ICA channel is actually made up of 32 different channels inside of there. Okay? How much of that bandwidth is the screenshots he's getting? How much is printer traffic? How much is file redirection? Things like that. And I can go in and see valuable information about the traffic flow back and forth. Okay? So really nice things that they've enhanced with the Insight product. Okay? And then the final big change is front-end optimizations. Okay? And when it comes to building web pages, there is a methodology of separating out the content from the delivery. And so we go in and we use what are called cascading style sheets for that. So you build an HTML page, it's got all your content on it. How it renders on the page is controlled by the CSS file. Okay? Or I might want to include JavaScript, or there might be images or things like that. So when you come in and you try to index, or you try to access the index page, it hands you out the index page. You then render it, and then you go and get the CSS page. Then you get the JavaScript. Okay? And you make several calls back and forth to get this information to display this page. Okay? Now, the user doesn't know this, but if you do a file capture, you see it. Okay? They made 1 request, and it ended up making 5 requests to the back-end server. Okay? Now, we do this because it optimizes the web coding process. It obviously doesn't optimize the web delivery process because you're having to make 5 requests. So we've got a feature on the NetScaler that we've had for a while called caching. Those requested items, let's store them on the NetScaler. So when you come in and request them, we'll serve them off the NetScaler and you get them more quickly. Okay? Well, now what they've done is they said, there is a better way that we could optimize this. I could give you an HTML page and stick the style sheet information in it. Okay? I could embed the JavaScript in it. And so instead of having to make separate calls for all those pieces, you make a call to NetScaler, it reassembled all of those pieces into one index.html file. And you pull down that one file, and it renders in the browser. Okay? So you still have good coding practices on the back end, separating out the HTML from the JavaScript from the CSS, but the user delivery, they make a single call, they get back a single response, content is rendered. And so it's a really nice feature that they've brought into the 10.5 version of the code. If you have and are using caching, you can use these optimizations, and your end users will get a snappier experience. They make a request, page comes in and renders. Instead of page comes in, make another request, another request, another request, then maybe I'll show you your content. Okay? And so you can go in and they've got all sorts of things that it will do to really optimize what the environment is going to look like. Okay? And so this is something brand new in the 10.5 version of the code that builds off of the caching functionality. Okay? So that is all I had to talk about with the new features. I'm sorry I ran a little bit long, so I think we've got a few minutes that Rich can field a few Q&A questions for.
Matthew, thanks a lot. Great job as always. We do have a few questions that came over, so I'll do my best to read those questions to you, Matthew, and we'll take a crack at answering them. If we don't have time to get to all the questions, I was able to capture all the questions, and so we'll follow up with you with an email for those of you that asked a question and we don't actually get to it during the few minutes that we have left. Okay, so first question, Matthew. Will Citrix ever support traffic domains for NetScaler gateway services on the SDX VPX platform?
Boy, that's a tricky question. What they've done is they've gone in and you've got support for the traffic domains across most of the features on the NetScaler. Being able to go in and separate that out from the SDX platform just really depends on what it is you're trying to do. So there's a lot of things that we can do with like the VLAN filtering and things on the SDX platform to control what works its way up to the NetScaler. And then once it gets there, you use traffic domains on the instance to be able to separate out that traffic. And then I'm not sure exactly if you're looking at discriminating who gets access to what on the back end using traffic domains, but there's some different functionality there that people are starting to use. And I haven't really heard a lot of people using traffic domains in the past. Seems like maybe over the last 6 months, that's been something that a lot of people have started asking me about. So I think that's starting to become a little bit more front and center.
Okay, thanks, Matthew. Okay, this question's about web interface. He says fixing web interface after the upgrade to 10.5 has been inconsistent. Do you have any methods or tricks to share for that?
Good question. One of the nice things about the NetScaler is it's a very additive product. So in the 9.3 version of the code, when they came out with the web interface hosted on the NetScaler, that was a pretty good thing. And then they decided they want to end of life the web interface and we should be moving towards storefront. But because you might have used it in 9.3, it's there in 10.0. Because it's in 10.0, it's there in 10.1. Because you might have used it in 10.1, it's there in 10.5. So the support is there. One of the big things I see people do is the customization. If they go in and do any customizations of either the gateway or the web interface, you have to remember that you're working with RAM. So when you're logged in there and you're editing the page that's being displayed to you, that is actually stored in RAM, not on a hard drive. And so the big mistake that I see a lot of people make is they don't go in and make those customizations and then save them to the hard drive. There's like a NetScaler directory on bar that you can put things into, and then you edit a config file to copy those changes to RAM each time it boots up. So I see a lot of people make changes, they reboot their NetScaler, and the changes are gone. So you might want to look at making sure that you're backing that up onto the actual hard drive, not just editing the running config version of it.
Okay, thanks, Matthew. Okay, next question. If you are using SSL profiles, can you still have global rules that apply to all of the additional ones in the SSL, or do you need to define all rules in the SSL profile?
No, it's an optional component. So if you don't go in and use it, then you've got a global setting. So if you need to, you can go in and change it there, and then everything is going to use it. And then you can use a profile for your one-off scenario to overwrite those global settings for you.
Okay, next question. In a NetScaler 10.5 environment, they're using Active Directory for all of their user authentication. Can we restrict logons by group membership?
Yes, you can. And what happens is when you go in and configure your LDAP authentication, you set up a server object and you say authenticate to this LDAP server, and you have to put in credentials to say this is an account that can authenticate users to the back end. Separately, you go in and say I'm looking for the user's SAM account name in Active Directory, and then you're looking for group memberships, and so you're looking for the member of property and you're looking for the CN object. There is a search filter in there. So instead of just going in and saying in Active Directory these users can authenticate, you can say look in Active Directory, but, and then you can use that search filter to say only these groups are going to be able to successfully authenticate. So you see a lot of people will do that for like who can manage the NetScaler. Yes, go look in Active Directory, but you need to be a NetScaler admin or you need to be an IT admin to actually be able to log in. You can still restrict who can do what, but you really want to prevent a janitor from being able to log in and use his credentials to get onto the NetScaler at all. The search filter option in the LDAP properties will do that for you.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one or two more questions. The next question is for endpoint analysis. Do we still need? Oh boy, I'm not sure. I'm trying to read between the lines here, Matthew. Let's see. For endpoint analysis, do we still need internal Windows Advanced Access Control servers? Okay, Flaminio, can you send me an email with a little more detail on your question, and I'll forward it to Matthew. You can email me at rich@layer8training.com, and we'll get this answered for you. Okay. Okay. Last question, and then we'll end the webinar. We have clustered UI theme under NetScaler 10.5 for AG logon page. Are you with me so far, Matthew?
Yes.
Okay. It will revert back to default either after reboot or switch back to default UI and then switch to custom UI. We are trying to automate this by a NetScaler script. Will you have any other better recommendations?
No, the scripting process is usually what you're going to do, and it should be the rc.conf file that runs when the NetScaler boots up, and that's where you go in and say, here's my saved configuration on the hard drive, copy this to the RAM, which is where the page is getting handed out, and that's the most accepted way of going in and doing that.
Okay, excellent. Okay, that's all the time we have for questions, Matthew. There are several more that we didn't have time to get to. Again, I've captured all of those questions and the person that asked the questions, so we will respond back to you. In the meantime, if you have any other questions, please feel free to send me an email, and I'll, if it's a technical question about NetScaler, as long as you're not asking us to do free consulting, we can answer some simple questions for you. Again, my email address, if you replace the info with my name, which is Rich, rich@layer8training.com, I'll make sure I route the question to Matthew if it's something that I can't answer, and we'll go ahead and reply to you and get you an answer. So again, I just want to thank all of you for attending today. I want to thank Matthew for taking time out of his schedule and his class to not only deliver the webinar but prepare it as well. And if we can be of any service or any help to you in the future with your NetScaler training needs or any other training needs, we hope that you'll reach out to us and let us know. So with that, we are going to sign off, and we'll send out the link to the webinar recording so that you can watch it again or share it. Thanks again, and have a great day.